A U.S. Marine followed a German Shepherd across the hillside and found life waiting in the shadows. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character, Staff Sergeant Daniel Carter, a white U.S. Marine who has learned to move through the world quietly since leaving active duty, a man whose boots still know the weight of long miles even when the road ahead looks empty, and on this late afternoon he stands alone at the edge of a windswept hillside where the air smells of dry grass and sun-warmed stone, the slope rolling out before him like a held breath, the light low and amber as the day begins to fold into evening, and beside him is Rook, a German Shepherd with a sable and black coat dulled by dust and travel, ears alert but calm, posture steady in a way that makes Daniel pause because Rook does not bark, does not pull, does not circle, he simply looks once and then turns, stepping forward with a certainty that feels older than training, and Daniel hesitates only a second before following. Because he has learned that silence can be a warning and patience can be a promise, the hillside rising. At a shallow grade, maybe a quarter-mile across, scattered with scrub and rock, the wind pushing against them in gentle gusts, and with every step Daniel notices how Rook keeps a measured pace, never rushing, never stopping, just enough to make sure he is still there, the Marine's breath evening out as the ground grows uneven, his boots crunching softly over gravel, his eyes adjusting to the long shadows stretching from the low sun, and there is something about the way the light thins ahead, a darker patch beneath a stand of weathered trees, that tightens his focus, because out here things are usually simple, either empty or obvious, and this feels like neither, the distance closing as Rook slows and angles toward the shade, Daniel catching the faint scent of damp earth where the hillside dips, a coolness that does not belong to the day, and he realizes he has stopped listening to his own thoughts, tuned instead to the small details, the hush of the wind, the faint rustle of leaves, the steady rhythm of Rook's steps, and in that quiet he understands why he followed, not out of duty or habit, but because sometimes life waits where the light cannot reach, and sometimes it takes 4 steady paws to lead a tired man back to it. The hillside grows quieter as Daniel Carter follows Rook into the thinning light, the world narrowing to the sound of his own breathing and the soft brush of grass against denim, the slope easing just enough to hide what lies ahead, and the shade beneath the trees feels cooler, almost deliberate, as if it has been saving its breath. Rook slows further now, paws careful, nose low, not searching wildly but confirming what he already knows. And Daniel notices the way the German Shepherd angles his body to block the wind, a habit learned from nights that demanded patience. The air carries a faint dampness that does not match the dry afternoon, a hint of water trapped somewhere nearby, and Daniel's instincts settle into a familiar place, not alarmed, just awake. He counts steps without meaning to, 20, 30, the ground dipping into a shallow hollow where the hillside gathers itself, and here the shadows hold their shape longer, darker. The sun unable to reach past the branches, Rook stops, finally, not rigid, not tense, just still, ears forward, tail low, waiting. Daniel closes the distance and kneels, boots pressing into soft soil, and in the quiet he hears it, not a sound so much as a suggestion, a thin movement of air that does not belong to the wind. His eyes adjust, scanning left to right, the hollow framed by roots and stone, a place easy to miss if you were not looking to be led. And Daniel understands then why Rook did not rush, why he did not bark, because urgency would have shattered something fragile. Daniel sets his pack down slowly, the zipper barely whispering. He leans forward, careful with his weight, and the smell grows clearer, clean and faint, like rain that never reached the ground. Rook steps once, then stops again, positioning himself just ahead, a quiet guard, and Daniel sees movement in the darkest pocket near the base of a tree, not dramatic, just present, a small rise and fall that tells him he is not alone here. His chest tightens, not with fear, but with recognition, because this is the space between too late and just enough, the place where timing matters more than strength. He speaks softly without words, his hands open, palms down, letting the moment breathe. Rook glances back once, eyes steady, and Daniel nods, a promise exchanged. Without sound, the Marine shifts closer, measuring inches, mindful of the uneven ground, and the hollow seems to hold its breath with him. The hillside above remains unchanged, sky wide, wind steady, as if the world has agreed to wait. Daniel feels the weight of years settle and lift at the same time, the quiet lessons of following instead of leading, of trusting what you cannot see until you are close enough to care. And here, in the cool shade where the sun cannot reach, life makes itself known, not with noise or spectacle, but with persistence, and Daniel stays there, grounded, patient, allowing the moment to unfold on its own terms, because some discoveries ask for nothing more than stillness. Daniel Carter shifts his weight carefully, the hollow holding his balance as if it understands the need for patience, and he finally sees clearly what the shadows have been protecting, a small shape tucked against the roots, wrapped in leaves and cool earth, breathing shallow but steady, life reduced to its simplest rhythm, and Daniel exhales without realizing he was holding his breath. His training telling him to move with purpose while his instincts insist on gentleness. He inches closer, one knee touching the ground, the soil cool through the fabric, and Rook lowers himself as well, body curved just enough to shield the space from the breeze, a silent wall against the coming chill. Daniel removes his jacket slowly, the fabric whispering as he folds it, placing it near the small figure to trap warmth without crowding, his hands steady, movements deliberate, because here haste would only take more than it gives. The light continues to fade, the sun sliding behind the ridge, turning the hillside into a palette of grays and golds, and the world beyond the hollow feels distant now, as if it has stepped back to let something fragile continue. Daniel listens again, focusing on that faint rise and fall, measuring time in seconds instead of miles. He glances at Rook, whose eyes remain fixed, alert but calm, trust flowing both ways, and Daniel murmurs a few quiet words, not instructions, just presence, the kind meant to be heard even if they are not understood. The hollow smells of earth and leaves and something clean, something alive, and Daniel feels the weight of the moment settle into him, not heavy, but anchoring, reminding him why he still carries these instincts long after the uniform has been folded away. He reaches for his phone, checks the signal, one thin bar flickering, enough. He types carefully, keeping the device low, relaying coordinates he memorized without thinking, years of habit surfacing when needed most. Then he waits, because waiting is also an action. Rook shifts slightly, adjusting his position to keep the warmth in, his breath slow, even, and Daniel mirrors it without meaning to. Sinking himself to the calm the dog provides, the hillside answers with quiet, the wind softening, the trees holding their leaves still, and time stretches in a way that feels kind rather than cruel. Daniel studies the small face in the shadows, seeing the subtle signs of persistence, the way life holds on without asking for attention, and something loosens in his chest, a tight place he did not know was there. The kind that comes from carrying too much for too long. He thinks of how easily this place could have been passed by, how simple it would have been to stay on the open trail where the light was easy, and he understands again that following is sometimes the bravest choice. The minutes pass, marked by breath and the steady presence of four paws beside him, and Daniel stays exactly where he is, grounded, patient, letting the hillside do what it has been waiting to do, holding life until someone was willing to listen. The light slips away almost without warning, the hillside trading gold for blue as evening settles in, and Daniel Carter feels the temperature drop a few degrees, enough to notice but not enough to rush. He shifts closer to the small figure, angling his body to block the draft that creeps along the ground, the hollow now a pocket of stillness carved out of the larger world. Rook adjusts again, pressing his side against Daniel's knee, sharing warmth in the simple, unspoken way that needs no instruction. The German shepherd's breathing slow and even, a steady metronome that keeps the moment from drifting. Daniel checks the jacket where he placed it, careful not to disturb what rests beneath, and the faint rhythm of breath continues, fragile but present, enough to keep hope anchored. The sky above darkens to a deeper shade, stars beginning to prick through where the trees thin, and the hillside takes on a quiet that feels intentional, as if it knows sound would only complicate things. Daniel listens anyway, attuned to distant noises, the faraway call of night insects, the soft rustle of leaves, the muted hum of the world continuing somewhere beyond the ridge. He glances at his phone again, the signal steadier now, a small mercy, and he sends one more update, short and precise, trusting that someone on the other end understands what waiting means. Rook lifts his head briefly, ears swiveling, then settles back down, satisfied, Daniel mirrors the calm, slowing his own breathing, letting the tension drain from his shoulders. He thinks about how often life has demanded speed from him, quick decisions, faster reactions, and how rare it feels to be asked for patience instead. The hollow seems to reward that patience, the air holding steady, the warmth beneath the jacket lingering just enough. Minutes pass without shape. Measured only by breath and presence, Daniel finds his thoughts drifting to small details, the feel of the earth under his palm, the way the roots curve like sheltering arms, the trust implicit in Rook's posture, and he realizes that none of this feels accidental, that the path they took, the pause, the silence, all of it led here for a reason that does not need explanation. A faint sound reaches him then, not sharp, not alarming, but real, a subtle change in rhythm that tells him the life beneath the shadows is responding. He leans in just enough to confirm, then stills again, choosing restraint over reassurance, because sometimes the best way to help is simply not to interfere. The night deepens, stars multiplying overhead, and Daniel feels the weight of the day give way to something steadier, a quiet resolve. He stays there, grounded between earth and sky, a marine and a German shepherd holding space on a hillside, trusting that what was found will not be lost, trusting that waiting, when done with care, can be its own kind of action. Time stretches gently, the kind that does not press but invites, and Daniel Carter feels it settle around them like a thin blanket. The hillside now fully surrendered to night, the stars overhead steady and indifferent, yet somehow comforting. He shifts his position again, careful to keep his movement slow, deliberate, the ground cool beneath him, his knee stiff but manageable. Years of habit allowing him to ignore discomfort when something more important asks for attention. Rook remains close, his body a quiet constant, the warmth from the dog noticeable now that the air has cooled further, and Daniel is grateful for it, grateful for the way presence can be shared without effort. The hollow seems to breathe with them, each subtle rise and fall beneath the jacket confirming that life is still choosing to stay. Daniel listens for changes, for signs that require action, but what he hears instead is steadiness, fragile yet persistent, and he allows himself a small release of tension, a loosening in his shoulders. The phone vibrates softly in his hand, a message confirming help is moving their way, not immediate, but real, and that is enough for now. Daniel replies with care, conserving battery, conserving calm. The hillside answers with quiet, no sudden gusts, no sharp sounds, just the low hum of night settling into its routine. He glances at Rook, whose eyes catch a sliver of starlight, reflecting it back with a focus that feels almost deliberate, and Daniel places a hand briefly on the dog's shoulder, a simple touch, grounding, shared. Rook does not move, does not need reassurance. He already understands the assignment, to stay, to guard, to wait. Minutes pass again, uncounted, and Daniel finds himself thinking about how rarely the world pauses like this, how often people move past places without noticing what they hold, and he wonders how many times Rook has seen what others missed, how many quiet decisions led them here tonight. A faint sound shifts beneath the jacket, subtle but different, and Daniel leans in just enough to notice the change, not alarmed, just attentive. He adjusts the fabric slightly, careful to keep warmth in, his hands steady, respectful, the kind of care that does not assume control. The response is immediate, the rhythm settling again, stronger now, and Daniel feels something warm and unexpected rise in his chest, not relief exactly, but gratitude, the kind that comes when effort meets timing. The hillside remains unchanged, the stars continuing their slow work, but the hollow feels lighter somehow, as if the night itself is aware that something important is happening quietly beneath its cover. Daniel stays with it, grounded, patient, his breathing matching the calm he has chosen, trusting that the path Rook set them on was not just about finding, but about staying long enough to matter. And in that stillness, surrounded by earth and shadow and steady presence, Daniel understands that this moment does not need witnesses, does not need recognition, it simply needs time, and he is willing to give it. The night deepens into something steady and full, the kind that does not threaten but surrounds, and Daniel Carter senses a subtle shift in the air, a change not of weather but of momentum, as if the waiting has reached a turning point. He checks the hollow again with practiced calm, noticing how the small rhythm beneath the jacket has grown more confident, breaths no longer tentative but measured, each one a quiet declaration of presence, and Daniel allows himself to acknowledge it with a slow nod, careful not to let relief rush ahead of reason. Rook lifts his head and turns it slightly toward the ridge, ears adjusting, catching something beyond human hearing, and Daniel follows the cue, listening until he catches it too, a distant sound carried by the night, not loud, not urgent, but distinct enough to register as movement elsewhere in the world. Help closing the distance. The hillside seems to respond by holding its calm. The wind easing, the leaves barely stirring, and Daniel remains exactly where he is, grounded and attentive. He adjusts his posture again, stretching a stiff joint quietly, mindful not to disturb the warmth they have built. The jacket remains in place, the earth beneath it doing its quiet work, and the faint life it shelters continues to answer with steadiness. Daniel thinks about how moments like this rarely announce themselves, how they arrive quietly and leave just as quietly, changed only by who was willing to stay. The distant sound grows clearer now, still far, but undeniably present, and Rook stands, not to leave, but to reposition, placing himself at the edge of the hollow where shadow meets open ground, a watchful figure outlined faintly by starlight. Daniel trusts the dog completely, that trust earned over miles and choices made without words. He checks his phone again, conserving battery, confirming location details he already knows by heart, the screen light brief and contained. He sends one final update, then silences it, returning his attention fully to the moment at hand. The hollow feels warmer now, or perhaps Daniel is simply more aware of it. He places a steady hand on the ground, feeling the cool firmness of soil and stone, anchoring himself to the place. Time continues its slow movement, not dragging, not rushing, just passing, marked by breath and the distant approach of others who understand urgency without panic. Rook glances back at Daniel once more, eyes bright and calm, and Daniel meets the look with a quiet certainty, a shared understanding that what mattered most has already been done. They followed, they stayed, they listened. The hillside holds them all in this suspended moment, the sky vast above, the earth solid below, and in between, a small life choosing to continue. Daniel remains still, present, and ready, knowing that sometimes the most important part of rescue is not the arrival, but everything that happens before it, when patience becomes action and silence becomes shelter, and he stays there, unmovable, until the night itself signals that the waiting has done its work. The sound grows closer now, still muted by distance and terrain, but no longer imagined, and Daniel Carter feels the moment narrow into something intimate despite the approaching presence of others. He stays low beside the hollow, choosing not to stand, not to break the quiet they have built, the small rhythm beneath the jacket steady but delicate, as if aware that this is a threshold. Rook remains at the edge, posture tall and composed, a silhouette of patience against the night, and Daniel lets his focus drift inward, not away from what is happening, but deeper into it. He places one hand flat against the earth, grounding himself, the other resting lightly on his knee, and he closes his eyes for a brief second, not out of fatigue, but intention. The hillside feels vast and personal all at once, the stars overhead unmoving witnesses, the air cool and clean, and Daniel breathes slowly, deliberately, matching the calm he has practiced for years. He does not speak loudly, does not call out, instead he murmurs a few quiet words meant for no one and everyone at the same time, words shaped by gratitude rather than fear, by hope rather than demand, the kind of prayer that does not ask for miracles but acknowledges presence. He thanks the path that led them here, the dog that knew where to go, the patience that held when urgency would have failed, and he asks only for enough time, enough steadiness, enough grace to see this through. Rook shifts slightly, sensing the change in Daniel's breathing, and settles again, content. The hollow answers with a subtle movement, a reminder that life is still choosing to respond, and Daniel opens his eyes, returning fully to the moment. The distant sound grows clearer now, footsteps perhaps, careful and measured, and Daniel signals softly with his hand when he finally sees shapes moving along the ridge. He does not rush to meet them, does not wave frantically, trusting that calm will guide them in as it guided him. The hillside seems to exhale, the waiting loosening just a fraction, but Daniel keeps his posture steady, his voice low when he finally speaks, brief and precise, offering information without drama, without urgency, because panic has no place here. The others approach slowly, respecting the quiet they can feel even if they do not yet understand it. Daniel stays kneeling, one hand still on the ground, the other hovering near the jacket. Ready but restrained, the night holds them all in a shared understanding that this moment is fragile, not because it is weak, but because it matters. Rook remains vigilant, eyes tracking movement, body relaxed but prepared, and Daniel feels a deep sense of alignment settle into him, the rare clarity that comes when actions, timing, and intention meet without resistance. He takes one more slow breath, offering the moment back to the night that kept it safe, trusting that whatever happens next will be guided by the same quiet care that brought them here, and he stays present, grounded, and open, knowing that sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is to stand still and let grace arrive at its own pace. The presence of others settles into the hollow like a careful breath, not crowding, not rushing, and Daniel Carter feels the shared focus align without needing explanation. Voices remain low, movements measured, and the night seems to approve, holding its quiet as hands approach with the same respect that guided the waiting. Daniel stays close, offering brief details in a calm tone, the kind shaped by long practice, the kind that keeps fear from spreading. The small rhythm beneath the jacket answers steadily, and Daniel adjusts the fabric just enough to keep warmth where it belongs. Rook shifts a step to the side to make space without leaving his post, eyes attentive, posture relaxed, the German shepherd reading the room as naturally as breath. A light appears briefly and then dims, angled away, careful not to startle, and Daniel appreciates the restraint, the understanding that here less is more. The hollow remains the center of gravity, the place where patience earned its meaning. The air carries a subtle change now, not urgency, but readiness. And Daniel senses the moment opening, not ending. He places his hand lightly near the jacket again, grounding himself and the space, his breathing slow, steady, contagious. The others mirror it without instruction. The hillside holds its shape, stars fixed overhead, the ridge a quiet boundary against the larger world, and within that boundary, care unfolds with deliberation. Daniel watches closely, attentive to the smallest shifts, offering a nod here, a pause there, allowing the rhythm beneath the jacket to set the pace. Rook lowers his head briefly, acknowledging the movement, then lifts it again, satisfied, the dog's presence a steady reassurance that this place has been chosen well. Time moves forward now, gently, the kind of forward that does not erase what came before. Daniel feels the transition as a soft release, the weight of waiting easing without disappearing, replaced by a calm confidence that what was needed has been done. The jacket is lifted with care, not abruptly, warmth preserved as long as possible, and the response remains steady, a quiet answer to every careful touch. Daniel exhales slowly, not in relief, but in gratitude. The difference matters to him. The hillside seems to respond, a faint breeze stirring leaves at last, as if permission has been granted for the night to continue. Rook steps closer to Daniel's side, pressing his shoulder lightly against the Marine's leg, a brief contact that says everything necessary. Daniel places his hand on the dog's neck for a moment, grounding them both. The others move with purpose now, still calm, still respectful, and Daniel steps back just enough to allow the space to change without breaking. He watches, present, attentive, trusting the process he helped set in motion. The hollow no longer feels like a secret, but it still feels sacred, the kind of place that does not ask for recognition, only care. And as the night carries the moment forward, Daniel remains steady, aware that what matters most is not how loudly a life is saved, but how quietly it is protected. And he stands there with Rook, under the open sky, knowing that sometimes the shadows do not hide life, they hold it until someone is willing to arrive gently. Something changes in a way that cannot be mistaken, subtle but undeniable, and Daniel Carter feels it before he fully sees it, a shift in rhythm beneath the careful hands and borrowed warmth, a response that carries intention rather than reflex, the kind that makes everyone in the hollow pause at once without being told. The night seems to lean in, listening, and Daniel moves closer again, not crowding, not reaching too fast, his attention sharpened by years of reading moments like this. The jacket is adjusted slightly, light kept low and indirect, and there it is, a clearer rise and fall, followed by a small, deliberate movement that answers presence with presence. Daniel releases a slow breath through his nose, grounding himself, keeping his voice calm and low as he quietly acknowledges what everyone already knows, that life is not just holding on now, it is responding. Rook lifts his head higher, ears forward, tail still, his focus absolute, and Daniel feels a quiet surge of gratitude toward the dog, toward the path that led them here, toward the patience that made room for this moment. The response comes again, slightly stronger, a small sound carried on breath that is not distress but effort. the kind that says do not leave yet, and Daniel nods, a reflex of reassurance, even though he knows the reassurance flows both ways. Hands move with care now, coordinated, respectful, preserving warmth while making space for what needs to happen next, and Daniel stays close enough to be useful without taking over, his role shifting naturally from sole guardian to steady anchor. The hillside remains calm, the stars unchanged, but the hollow feels brighter somehow, as if the darkness has agreed to loosen its hold. Daniel watches the careful exchange unfold, every movement measured in inches, every pause intentional. The response beneath the jacket continues, consistent, present, and Daniel feels a quiet certainty settle into him, the kind that does not celebrate early but recognizes when a threshold has been crossed. Rook steps forward just enough to bring his scent closer, then stops, lowering his head slightly, offering comfort without pressure, and the response answers again, stronger now, a sign of awareness that draws a collective stillness. Daniel places a hand briefly over his own chest, feeling his heartbeat, steady and calm, reminding himself to keep it that way, because this moment deserves steadiness, not noise. The air feels warmer, or perhaps Daniel is simply noticing it differently. The night insects resume their low chorus at the edge of hearing, as if reassured that it is safe to continue, and Daniel allows himself a small, internal acknowledgement, not victory, not relief, but recognition, that the quiet work of waiting has borne fruit. He stays present, eyes attentive, movements restrained, letting the response set the pace, and when it comes again, clear and intentional, there is no doubt left in the hollow. Life has chosen to step forward, and Daniel remains exactly where he is, steady beside Rook, under the open sky, witnessing a turning point that asks for nothing more than continued care, patience, and respect for the quiet way miracles prefer to arrive. The moment continues to unfold with a careful inevitability, the kind that feels earned rather than sudden, and Daniel Carter senses the pace shift from waiting to guiding, not rushed, not forced, but gently directed. The response beneath the jacket now consistent, present, answering touch and warmth with intention, and Daniel keeps his movements slow, his voice low when he offers brief confirmations, his tone steady enough to calm even himself. The others mirror it instinctively, hands working in quiet coordination, preserving the warmth they built while preparing for what comes next. The hollow feels brighter now, not from light, but from assurance, and Daniel notices how the night seems to relax around them, the air moving again, the insects resuming their low chorus as if the world has decided it is safe to breathe. Rook remains close, shifting just enough to stay aligned with Daniel, his presence a steady constant, and Daniel places a brief hand on the dog's shoulder, grounding both of them. The jacket is lifted carefully, replaced with layers meant for travel, the transition deliberate and respectful, and the response remains steady, stronger now, each breath a quiet confirmation. Daniel watches closely, attentive to every small sign, offering calm acknowledgement without fanfare. Because this is not a moment for celebration, it is a moment for continuity. The hillside holds them as the change completes, the stars overhead unchanged, the ridge still dark against the sky, but the hollow feels transformed, no longer a place of waiting, but a place of passage. Daniel steps back slightly to allow space, his role shifting again, from guardian to witness, and he is comfortable with that, trusting the care unfolding in front of him. Rook follows his lead, stepping back just enough to give room while staying close, his eyes tracking movement with quiet approval. The night deepens but does not press, and Daniel senses the collective focus easing into confidence, the kind that does not rush ahead but knows when the path is clear. The response remains steady through the careful lift, through the transition, through the first steps away from the hollow, and Daniel feels a slow, measured release in his chest, not relief alone, but something like gratitude settling into place. He glances once more at the hollow, now empty of its burden, and acknowledges it silently. Thankful for the shelter it offered when it was needed most, the hillside receives the movement without resistance, the path opening naturally, and Daniel walks alongside for a few steps, then slows, knowing when to let go. Rook pauses with him, looking back once toward the hollow, then forward again, and Daniel understands the exchange. Some places are not meant to be left unchanged, they are meant to be honored and released. The night carries them onward now, and Daniel remains where he is, steady and present, watching the quiet work continue, aware that what began in shadow has moved into care, not loudly, not dramatically, but with the same patience that made it possible, and he stands there with Rook under the open sky, knowing that this is how grace often travels, step by careful step, guided by those willing to follow, wait, and trust the quiet way forward. The hillside grows quieter again as the movement carries away into the night, and Daniel Carter remains where he is, allowing the space to settle after the passage, the hollow now empty but not vacant, holding the memory of warmth and patience like an imprint in the earth. He watches the careful shapes descend along the path until they become part of the darkness, not gone, just continuing elsewhere, and only then does he let his shoulders ease. The tension he carried dissolving slowly, honestly. Rook stands beside him, posture relaxed now, his task complete without ceremony, the German shepherd's breath steady, his presence familiar and grounding. Daniel takes a long, deliberate breath, tasting the cool air, and notices how different it feels now, lighter somehow, as if the night itself has shifted its weight. The stars remain overhead, unchanged, yet the hillside feels altered, not dramatically, but meaningfully, a place that has fulfilled a quiet purpose. Daniel takes a few slow steps back toward the open ground. His boots finding familiar purchase, the stiffness in his joints reminding him of time passing, but not burdening him. He pauses once more and looks back at the hollow, offering it a moment of silent acknowledgement, not gratitude that asks for recognition, but respect that honors what was given freely. Rook follows his gaze, ears lifting briefly, then settling again, and Daniel reaches down to rest a hand on the dog's neck. Feeling the warmth and solid reassurance there, the simple contact grounding them both, they stand together without hurry, listening to the night reclaim its usual rhythm, the insects louder now, the breeze moving through the grass, the world resuming without spectacle. Daniel reflects quietly on how the evening unfolded, how following led to waiting, how waiting became care, and how care became passage. He thinks about how easily this moment could have been missed. How many paths remain unseen because no one slows enough to notice them. The thought does not weigh on him, it steadies him, reinforcing a truth he has learned and relearned over years, that presence matters more than control, that patience is often the strongest response. Rook shifts his weight and looks toward the trail that will take them home, not urging, just offering direction, and Daniel nods, understanding the suggestion without words. They begin the walk back at an unhurried pace, the hillside opening up before them. Familiar and calm, the path illuminated by starlight and memory. Daniel feels a quiet sense of completion settle into him, not an ending, but a chapter closed with care. He knows the night will carry the rest forward, that what they protected will continue its journey beyond this place, and that knowledge brings him peace. They move together through the dark, Marine and German shepherd, their silhouettes steady against the slope, leaving behind a hillside that has done its work, a place where life waited, was found, and was gently guided onward. And as they walk, Daniel allows himself one final thought, that sometimes the most meaningful acts leave no trace except in the people who are willing to stay, and he carries that with him, step by quiet step, into the waiting dark. The path back feels familiar in a new way, as if the ground itself remembers the quiet work that passed through it, and Daniel Carter walks with an easy, measured pace, the kind that comes after something important has been set right. Rook moves beside him, close enough to share warmth, far enough to watch the edges, a balance learned over years of silent agreement. The night air is cool and clean, carrying the faint scent of grass and stone, and Daniel lets his breathing settle into it, steady and unforced. The hillside slopes gently now, opening into broader ground, and the sky above stretches wide, a field of stars that feels less distant than it did before. He thinks about how little was required to change the course of the evening, a pause, a choice to follow, a willingness to wait without demanding answers, and the thought stays with him, not heavy, but clarifying. The trail curves, familiar landmarks passing quietly, and Daniel notices how Rook checks them without slowing, confirming direction out of habit rather than need. The German shepherd's presence a constant reminder that some guidance arrives without words. They reach a point where the hillside falls away behind them, the hollow now hidden from view, and Daniel glances back one last time, not searching, just acknowledging the place where patience was asked and given. He does not expect anything in return, does not frame the moment as a triumph. It simply feels complete, the kind of completeness that does not announce itself. The night continues on its ordinary course, insects singing, a breeze moving through low branches. The world unbroken and indifferent, and yet Daniel senses a quiet alignment within it, a sense that small, unseen choices still matter. He adjusts the strap of his pack and continues, boots finding rhythm, his joints easing as the walk lengthens. Rook's tail swings lightly now, relaxed, satisfied, and Daniel smiles faintly, not from joy, but from recognition, the recognition that trust, once given, has a way of returning when it is needed most. The path levels out, and the distant lights of the road come into view, soft and steady, not pulling, just present. Daniel slows slightly, allowing the moment to stretch, to settle into memory without hurry. He thinks about how many times he has searched for meaning in loud places, only to find it waiting quietly in the margins, and the thought does not judge him, it simply rests there, a truth he can carry forward. Rook glances up at him, eyes reflecting starlight, and Daniel meets the look with calm assurance. They do not need to speak, the understanding has already been shared. They move on together, the hillside behind them holding its silence, the night ahead opening gently, and Daniel feels a quiet conviction take shape, that mercy does not need witnesses, that patience can be an act of courage, and that sometimes the most enduring marks are left by those willing to arrive softly, stay long enough, and then walk away without asking to be remembered. He carries that conviction with him as the path leads onward, step by steady step, under a sky that keeps its own counsel, guided by a bond that asked for nothing and gave exactly what was needed. The road lights grow a little closer, then pass behind them as Daniel Carter and Rook slow their pace, choosing the long way back without discussion, the kind of choice that honors what has just happened by not rushing away from it. The night feels settled now, no longer holding its breath, and Daniel notices how his steps fall into an easy rhythm, the stiffness easing with movement, his thoughts quiet but clear. He does not replay the evening in sharp detail, does not dissect it for meaning. Instead he lets it rest where it belongs, trusting that what mattered will surface when it is needed. Rook walks with his head level and relaxed, ears flicking occasionally, aware but unburdened, and Daniel finds comfort in that posture, in the simplicity of shared presence. They reach a small rise where the hillside opens behind them, and Daniel stops for a moment, not because he needs to, but because the pause feels right. He looks out over the darkened land, the slope now indistinct, the hollow invisible, yet he knows exactly where it lies, not by sight, but by memory, by the weight it carried for a time. He removes his cap and holds it briefly at his side, a quiet gesture of respect. That does not ask for acknowledgement, then replaces it and turns back to the path. Rook waits without shifting, eyes on Daniel, and when they move again it is together, unspoken agreement intact. The night air cools slightly, carrying the faint promise of dawn somewhere far off, and Daniel thinks about how often people wait for big signs, loud answers, clear confirmations, while so much of what matters arrives quietly, almost unnoticed. He thinks about the trust it took to follow without certainty, to stay without guarantees, and he understands now that this is the shape of faith he knows best, not declared, not displayed, but practiced in small, steady decisions. The path curves toward familiar ground, and Daniel feels the gentle pull of home, not as a place, but as a sense of alignment. Rook glances up once more, their eyes meeting briefly, and Daniel feels a quiet gratitude rise, not for the outcome alone, but for the companionship that made the waiting possible. They continue on, the world resuming its ordinary sounds around them, tires passing somewhere distant, a bird stirring in the brush, life continuing without pause, and Daniel finds peace in that continuity, knowing that what they did not interrupt the world, it simply joined it at the right moment. They reach the edge of the trail and step onto firmer ground, the stars beginning to fade just slightly as the night turns toward morning, and Daniel feels a soft resolve settle into him, the kind that does not need words, that does not seek validation, only consistency. He adjusts his stride, ready to carry this quiet lesson forward, to remain attentive to what asks for care rather than applause. Rook stays close, steady and sure, and together they move on, leaving behind no marker, no sign, only the unseen truth that somewhere on a hillside, because someone followed, waited, and stayed, life was given the chance to continue, and that is enough. It has always been enough.